in our city. I am Councilmember Zachary Parker, and I have the privilege of representing Ward 5 on the DC Council. I also serve as the chair of the Council's Committee on Youth Affairs. Before we move forward in our program, I want to set the stage around the purpose of tonight's call. It is threefold. One is to share an update on recent events. It's been a whirlwind of happenings in the last few weeks, and the landscape and the context here in our city is shifting rapidly. Secondly, I want to share with you resources so that we can collectively take action and rally for our city. And then third, I want to save time for us to be able to answer as many questions as possible. I realize, given the number of neighbors on tonight, we may not be able to get to everyone in an hour's time. And so I am committed to following up should there be remaining questions. I also want to level set with residents. In the last 24 hours, we have received dozens and dozens of calls and emails, as we have over the last few weeks, from neighbors concerned, frustrated, angry, and acutely in the last 24 hours, there's been a concern about some of the language that residents heard at the mayor's press conference yesterday. And I just want to level set with you, and I can only speak for me as the Ward 5 council member. I have shared directly with my colleagues. I have shared with the mayor directly that it is dangerous and, quite frankly, unacceptable for us in practice or for our language to suggest that we are compromising, surrendering, or capitulating in this moment. There is a concerted effort to undermine DC's local autonomy by the Trump administration, as I believe there is a concerted effort to undermine American democracy. And I believe we need to name that and be clear about that. This is not a point to criticize anyone, but as we move forward in tonight's conversation, I think I owe it to you to be honest. And some of the language that I heard yesterday, I do not associate with and I reject it. I believe it is dangerous. And anything that would suggest that what is happening in DC and what the president has suggested he is planning to do in Chicago and New York and Oakland and other cities, any effort to suggest that that is in any way positive, I think is a step backward. I want to anchor on the purpose of our council office. I feel the weight of this moment, and I want neighbors to know we are still very much here to serve you. We are representing you every day in the Wilson Building out in the community, and that is not going to change as long as I have anything to do with it. And so feel free to continue to reach out to us, raise your constituent services needs, ask questions about policy. We are trying to remain focused on our critical mission while we also address what is happening in our city. With that, I want to review quickly our agenda for tonight's call. I know this is a short call, and that is in part given that I know a lot of people have a lot of competing priorities, and we wanted to get straight to the point. Following this short welcome, we will have a framing of this moment, a naming of the events that have led up to this moment over the last few weeks. We will share resources that we hopefully can use to take action together. And we're going to spend the bulk of our time answering your questions before we close. So with that, I have been clear, and I believe strongly that this moment is not about crime. With that said, the facts remain that DC's crime is at a historic low. Earlier this year, the Federal Department of Justice named that in 2024, DC saw 30-year lows in violent crime. Since then, we've seen an additional 26% decline in violent crime. But here's the challenge. There is crime in DC, and any crime is too much. I believe it is a losing debate for us to debate whether or not there's a sufficient level of crime in the city that is acceptable, because no crime is acceptable. I'm also clear that there is a pattern where it seems as though the administration is targeting certain cities with certain mayors. I will speak more clearly. The pattern seems Democratic-led cities with Black mayors, and there are other cities that have higher crime rates that have not been so far in the president's or his administration's viewpoint. So, with that said, the fact remains that DC is seeing historic lows in terms of crimes, and we are continuing to work to drive down crime through passing legislation, by working with our federal and local partners, by ensuring that we can implement swift justice and hold individuals that cause harm accountable. But I am clear that this has more to do with power and control than crime. It is important to frame where we are, that DC, or I'm sorry, the courts ruled recently that the US president cannot seize control of MPD. There has been a level of confusion given the president's initial press conference, where it was pretty clearly stated that the president could seize control of MPD. And you may recall there was an order given by the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, suggesting that the head of MPD would now be the head of DEA. Thanks to our Attorney General, Brian Schwab, the district filed suit in federal court. And one of the main takeaways from that lawsuit was that Judge Reyes made clear that the Home Rule Charter does not allow any US president to simply seize control of MPD. It is true that the Home Rule Charter allows the president to request services of MPD for up to 30 days. And we are still within that 30-day window. There are three main arms of federal enforcement in the district currently. And that includes federal officers, including the FBI, DEA, and other federal national officers. These individuals have been deployed across the city. They are engaging in traffic stops. You may have seen videos of these individuals in all quadrants of our cities. And it is true, DC routinely works with our federal partners, and there are relationships that predate this, what I would argue is a manufactured emergency. That said, the surge of officers in our city right now is abnormal, and I would argue is not being coordinated in the ways in which would be optimal for the city. There's also immigration enforcement that is happening across the country, focused namely on ICE. These are individuals usually with face coverings. They rarely seem to have clear identification or insignia. There have been numerous reports of ICE presence in Ward 5 and throughout the city, as well as abductions at Home Depot or in other areas, and it is deeply concerning. The federal courts have cleared way for the Trump administration to have ICE carry out these immigration efforts. And so the question, and I'm sure we will get to it, is what can be done? I will say part of the challenge we are facing with ICE is that, again, the federal courts have given a green light to much of Trump's or the Trump administration's efforts. And then lastly, we have the National Guard. There was a deploying of the DC National Guard as well as an employment of other state National Guards, including several Republican states. And these guardsmen are namely near metro stations and on federal properties. This is a slight nuance, but I think it's important to draw out, including for the Ward 5 residents who have or do serve in our National Guards. Our National Guardsmen are heroes. And I think it is important to differentiate their righteous call to service from the Trump administration's deployment of these individuals, ripping them from their families and communities and jobs to oftentimes not do much in our city. You may have seen images recently of these individuals picking up trash, or some look very bored, they're not supported. I think it's important for us to differentiate the heroic work that our National Guardsmen do on a daily basis across the country, but also here in DC, from the intention behind this manufactured crisis. And then last but not least, we are going to talk tonight about some of the more immediate action steps we can take. But the long-term fight for DC statehood remains. The federal actions taken by the Trump administration are ultimately the consequence of not DC not being a state. But as we likely will see and have seen in other jurisdictions, even states, there's an attempt to undermine democracy. And so that is, again, why I think there is a need for us to be clear-eyed in this moment about what's happening, what is the risk, because if we can properly name the challenge, we can properly address it. Here's a timeline of events. Since the declaration of the emergency and original executive orders by President Trump on August 11th. I won't read through all of this, but you can see how rapidly the landscape has shifted since August 11th, including an executive order just this week. There were orders by the U.S. Attorney General again, that attempted to seize control of MPD. There was a reversal and a second amendment or order, if you will, clarifying that MPD shall coordinate with immigration enforcement. There was an announcement by the U.S. Attorney that federal prosecutors will seek maximum charges against DC residents. At the same time, there was an announcement that there would be a downgrading of charges against those carrying rifles and shotguns. The date to pay attention to is September 10th. September 10th is the 30th day. And again, the Home Rule Charter allows the president to request services of MPD for up to 30 days. Beyond that point, it is an act of Congress that would extend the time where the president could request those services. The fight right now is for us to end this manufactured crisis and emergency, to push to remove National Guardsmen, certainly those not from DC, from our city, and to attempt to return back to normal. And again, September 10th is going to be a pivotal day for the district. Here are our calls to action. And I just want to name, I'm swiftly moving through this because I want to maximize time for questions and discussion. Tonight's call is being recorded, and we will be sure to follow up with everyone that registered and share information shared on tonight's call. What we're asking neighbors to join us in doing is to speak up and spread the word. We are sharing tonight a toolkit with you, and my team will drop that in the chat. It includes talking points. And the reason why this is important is because the narrative that has spread across the country and the narrative even here in DC must move beyond a discussion around crime. Again, any crime is too much. And yes, DC has work to do to continue to drive down crime. There is a bigger threat at hand, and we must be clear-eyed about that. Speaking up with your friends, family, and neighbors here in DC and around the country, letting them know what is really happening on the ground goes a long way to shifting national attitudes and support for the district. Second, we're asking you to contact congressional offices. There will be attempts to further undermine home rule. Right now, we have the filibuster in the Senate, which requires 60 Senate votes to pass legislation, which would include overturning our laws or undermining home rule. We need to shore up certainly the Democrats in the Senate to ensure that they are hearing directly from district residents, but all individuals of moral conscience that would stand with district residents in this time of federal overreach. We will share more about that in our toolkit, but we're asking you to join us in contacting congressional offices to urge them to stand with us, put an end to this manufactured crisis, and to stop any attempts to undermine district home rule. Third, We're asking you to join us for Ward 5 mobilization on the Hill on September 9th, 2025 at 11 a.m. We will assemble with Ward 5 neighbors, asking our congressional leaders to stand with us in this moment. My office will organize and coordinate with neighbors. There is a sign up form. My team will drop that in the chat as well, but you can also see the sign up on the screen. If you or other neighbors are interested in joining us on September 9th to go office to office to make the case to our congressional leaders, we would love to have you. We are also asking you to join us at a number of demonstrations throughout Ward 5. And notice I'm emphasizing joining us. I plan to be there right there with you. And we will weekly on Tuesday evenings from 5:30 to 7 at various high-profile locations throughout the ward join together to make a visual demonstration that we resist and reject what the Trump administration is attempting to do in our city. We are asking that you also share reports of federal activity from across Ward 5, whether that's ICE activity, rumors that you may have heard, reports of things that we ought to investigate. Again, the link is being dropped in the chat, but you can see on the screen at ward5.us/report. You can share those instances. And I want to thank neighbors who have already been doing that. You have DM'd us and emailed us and called us to let us know about stop checks and raids happening on our neighbors. It is incredibly helpful and allows us to follow up and coordinate and track down information. So keep doing it because together we are stronger. And then lastly, we are asking you to join us here in the Wilson Building to speak up at council hearings. This has been something I've been pushing for a long time. It is my hope that we would see many more Ward 5 neighbors engaging in the hearing process here at the council. There may be attempts to overturn legislation. There may be attempts to pass new legislation. It is critical that Ward 5 neighbors' voices are heard on the record. If you cannot join us here in the Wilson Building, you can submit testimony. Again, we are asking neighbors to join us here for council hearings and functions so that we can mobilize and move together. These are just some of the ways that we're hoping that we can come together over the next few weeks, especially leading up to September 10th. We heard in the mayor's press conference yesterday, there is a chance that September 10th may come. And there is an attempt to extend this emergency or extend the presence of federal officers in our city or extend the presence of National Guardsmen around the city. It is going to be important that we keep at it, continue to push back, speak up, and fight for home rule in our city in this moment. And I will be right there with you every step of the way. Again, the toolkit will be shared digitally. It is also being shared in the chat. This is a visual representation of what it looks like. We are hoping that this serves as a resource. Feel free to print it, share it with others that you may have access to. On the front page, there is a list of short links that you can use to review what your rights are should you be stopped by MPD or other federal officers. To report any federal activity that you're seeing anywhere in the city, really, but especially in Ward 5, to join us for Ward 5 demonstrations, as well as our mobilization on the Hill. In that toolkit, you'll see a number of resources, including to-dos and what not to do should you be stopped by federal officers. And it's important to name, there is a lot of concern, especially around ICE activity. I am as frustrated as many of you are. The suggestion that the presence of ICE agents in our city is harmful because they are masked does not go far enough. The presence of ICE agents in our city is harmful because they are ripping neighbors away from our community. They are separating families. They are ruining people's lives, and it is unacceptable. Again, the federal courts have given a green light for this activity to take place. And so I do just want to level set with you while we will continue to rally and do everything we can. I will shout out neighbors across the city. that have taken steps to protect their neighbors. But legally, there has been a green light given, at least from the federal courts, for some of the ICE activity that we're seeing. It is unacceptable and frightening that to have any individual with a mask peering in your window or asking you questions. Again, continue to report that. We will continue to fight against what's happening, but wanted to level set about the legal barriers that we are up against at this time. With that, we are at 7:52. We are good to 8:30. I want to prioritize the majority of our time with questions. I'm going to ask for neighbors to either drop your questions in the chat or raise your hand. This will not be a perfect science, so my apologies if I do not call you in the order that you may have raised your hand. I'm going to call as I see people raising their hand. I would ask that you err on the side of brevity. And if need be, we may have to move on to another person just so we can maximize as many people as possible. So I'm going to call the first three hands I see, and then we'll go to questions in the chat. First, we have Angel Austin. Angel, are you able to come off mute? They are saying they cannot unmute. Okay, give me a second. We need to figure that out. In the meantime, why don't we I got it. We will let us troubleshoot that on our end. Why don't we lift up questions that may be in the chat or use the chat until we can figure out the mute fun. One question I'm seeing is why was there a cluster of Metro Police standing outside the Rhode Island Avenue Metro tonight? They were clearly trying to intimidate people. We do have our 5D Commander Rooney on the call. Commander, I'm not sure if you can speak to that, but again, there is a presence of police outside of the Rhode Island Metro.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Commander Rooney from 5D. Those of you guys that don't know me, with specifics, was this Metro Transit Police Department or is this MPD officers?
The question just simply says there is a cluster of Metro Police standing. Oh, Metro Police. So it's not MPD, Metro
Okay.
Police.
Yeah, for that agency, I'm not really sure. I know that there was a bunch of kids that came off, and there was like a pushing and shoving match after school, and sometimes that stems a response. A lot of times it's a safety mechanism, and it's more the perception of something going on than the actual reality. Because if there's something that happened, normally I get a text around the fifth district, so I didn't hear anything about extra presence there.
Got it. Okay. Angel, you've been elevated. So if you want to try and ask your question now. It seems like you're unmuted, but we still can't hear you. Okay. It seems like we're still having some challenges with audio. Rachel, Kathy, Julia, Nicole, I see your hands. We're going to in the process of lifting you up. I will go to other questions. The constant low-flying helicopters in our neighborhood have had neighbors on edge. Do we know what agency is flying them? And is there anything the council can do to stop it? This is a question that I received yesterday, actually, at the borough's groundbreaking, and my team did some research. We are told from MPD, and Commander, feel free to jump in here,
Sure.
that the helicopter we believe a lot of people are referring to is from Border Control. Uh, and it is not an MPD helicopter. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, council member, that is absolutely correct. It is a Customs and Border Control helicopter that's been flying around. I've received dozens and dozens of emails about it. I'm not sure exactly how they deploy, but I know it's a common practice for them when they have troops on the ground to deploy. I don't know whether that's for safety. I've reached out just to get some clarity, but we would really have to hear back from them to see what how they're deploying that. It's not used, from what I understand, to pick people off from the helicopter, but it's more like a safety mechanism.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Rachel, you are now, or Rochelle, sorry if I'm mispronouncing it, you're now elevated and you should be able to ask your question.
Hi, it's Rachel. So
Oh.
thank you for having this, Councilmember Parker. I really appreciate it. Um, so with ICE and the masked agents that are unidentifiable, I've heard from a lot of people about the concern of vigilantism. And with one of Trump's latest executive orders, he is creating an online portal for people to be able to sign up to serve as DC National Guard, which will then be used to go to other cities. And I was wondering if there was any sort of way that we can respond to that. Yeah, just like if there's any protections in place that we have in order to hopefully stop that or do something about that.
Um, Thank you for the question. The answer is unsatisfying. And again, I think there is a difference between our local control and what has been greenlit at the federal level. And so far, there haven't been many barriers to the Trump administration's ICE activity. That said, I have seen neighbors band together to protect their vulnerable neighbors and ward off ICE activity. I'm not suggesting that you confront ICE agents or do anything that would break the law. But we did include in our toolkit a number of resources as well as a search tool should someone be detained. One of the frustrating things I encountered after the raid at Home Depot was how difficult it was to get any information. Who were these individuals? Where were they taken? What were they taken for? How long were they going to be held for? I heard of a neighbor that was abducted earlier this week, and fortunately, was the next day because they were able to share a green card. But the scary part about that is that they were still abducted overnight until somebody decided to let them go. So I don't have that information. We are continuing to work with the mayor's team, trying to get as much information. I have been told directly by the mayor's team that the federal government and our federal partners are not sharing a lot of information as it relates to ICE activity. I've recently heard that there is a detention facility in Chantilly, Virginia, that individuals may be held at. But again, there's more unknowns than we know at this time, sadly. Okay, I'm going to go to Julia. Julia, you've been elevated and you may ask your question.
Um, Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks so much again for holding this forum tonight. And I really appreciated your framing earlier. My question is about DCPS. I don't think I've heard anything from them. I know that communities, people are terrified, people aren't sending their kids to school. And I know that communities have been self-organizing, know your rights trainings, escorts, monitoring, just to help people feel safe enough to get their kids to school. But what is DCPS doing, is my question.
Can't speak for DCPS, but what I have been told is that they are revisiting their internal protocols to maintain maximum safety for their educators and students at all times. There is an inherent risk for young people traveling to and from school. I will be honest with you, I heard reports of ICE activity facing two parents as they were traveling to take their kid to school. It is a very real concern. I have had conversations with DCPS and the chancellor. I know other colleagues have. I think self-organizing and continuing to push and doing what you can for your neighbors at this time is what I would encourage. It is also important to continue to share with the mayor and her team the expectation of residents that more needs to be done for our district agencies so people know their rights, what the protocols are, and that we can actually keep folks safe. I'm not here to suggest DCPS is not doing that, but I am aware that parents are wanting more information from the agency. So again, I feel like that's an unsatisfactory answer, but I want you to know that I am pushing on it as well as other colleagues. One other thing I would also say, ICE activity at DCPS schools or within DCPS schools is a very real concern. And I think there was a report that I said, well, we won't come to school on the first day, but maybe we'll come in the future. It is an ongoing discussion and conversation that I'm having, other colleagues are having, and it would be downright unacceptable for us to see that type of activity happening at school. I do have oversight of CFSA in the Committee on Youth Affairs. I have directly spoken with the director. About the need to revisit our truancy policies on the short term, understanding that some families out of fear or necessity are keeping their kids at home. And we don't want to unnecessarily escalate some families through the system. So what I can share is that CFSA on their end, at least, they're treating this on a case-by-case basis and reviewing their internal protocols so that families are not harmed by the system while they're trying to keep their children safe. And I'm sorry, CFSA stands for Child and Family Service Agency. Sorry about that. Okay, I'm going to keep it moving just for the sake of time. Kathy Henderson, or Commissioner Henderson, you're next.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Parker. So Immigration, Customs, and Enforcement is a federal agency guided by federal regulations and the rule of law. So I'm just not understanding why you're suggesting that neighbors oppose their lawful actions.
Well, I am not suggesting, well, let me say this. I am not suggesting neighbors do anything illegal, and I certainly would not encourage neighbors to confront MPD or other federal officers or agents. I do think what is happening on our streets is unconscionable. I'm clear about that, and we may disagree, and I oppose it. I think even if one does care about immigration, there is a way to do that. And I find it hard to see the justice and ripping two parents away from their kid as they're trying to get their kid to school. So maybe we're on two different ends there. In our toolkit, we do have resources. I would encourage neighbors to check it out, share the information with neighbors that may be vulnerable, and do what you can to look out for one another. What might that look like? If there's a vulnerable neighbor, maybe checking in on them. Do they have food? Are there resources that they need at this time? Can you share information about what you're hearing and seeing, knowing the level of fear that is not just happening for immigrants, that is happening for our neighbors of Latin descent generally? I spoke to a neighbor who grew up in DC who said, I'm nervous that I may be picked up, as that neighbor was earlier this week and released the next day. It is unacceptable. I will end with this. Today it may be immigrants, and tomorrow very well could be you, Commissioner. And so that's why we should be very concerned by any attempt to allow this othering through our immigration enforcement systems. But thank you for being here and all that you do. Next, we have Nicole. And then I'm coming back to the chat. I know after Nicole, I'll ask Melissa to lift up some of the questions we're seeing in the chat.
Councilmember Parker, thank you so much for your leadership and your clarity tonight and then over the past few weeks. I appreciate and completely understand the focus on federal overreach and its impact on home rule, but I think, as you were just stating, we have to acknowledge that this is an attack on democracy writ large. And living in a capital, having worked in authoritarian contexts outside of this country, I've seen the importance of residents in a capital and the symbolism that we hold in our actions and how we move in these times. So let me ask you the question. Your last comment signaled this, but assuming that we move well past the September 10th date and we continue along this path, how are you in your office thinking through scenarios to build leverage and allies for a continued degradation of our liberties?
Great question. I can say the council continues to meet with the mayor and the attorney general. In fact, we met today. As an out office, we are continuing to share as much information as we can. I think our greatest leverage, given our lack of statehood, is leaning on our congressional partners as well as other jurisdictions that do have elected officials, national guardsmen, and other resources that we don't have access to. I come back to the general point, though, that right now it feels to me that DC is losing the debate, if you will. The framing happening when I look at cable news, for instance, is whether or not crime is down and is it good enough in DC. And we've completely lost the plot that there are tanks and military officials in an American city. And so, again, I just think it's important for us to continue to push the narrative and educate neighbors. And I don't mean that in a disparaging way, but also to mobilize our congressional partners because they, based on our Constitution, are the ones that have the greatest leverage to check the Trump administration. I hope that satisfies your question. I would say if neighbors have ideas of what more we could be doing in this time or what would be helpful, please do share tonight or in the future. Okay. Commissioner Branham, I'm going to come to you next, but I did say, Melissa, did you want to lift up one question or two that we may have gotten in the chat?
Sure. One of the questions that I'm seeing repeated a few times, I'm trying to synthesize to make sure we get to as many people as possible, is about anything that our office is doing to coordinate with DC public schools and charter schools to make sure that students and families have resources, counseling, legal aid, anything that you can speak to about that.
Great. I do want to give a shout out to some of the organizations that have organized with our charter schools throughout the city and in Ward 5. I think our charter schools actually have been a model for preparing for this moment in ICE activity. As the questions alluded to earlier, I personally want to see more from DCPS. That is what I've shared with the chancellor and the DCPS team. I think DCPS is knocking it out of the park in a lot of ways, including improved academic performance. But neighbors need to hear more from the agency about how we're going to keep our young people safe. I'm doing personally is sharing as many resources with our school partners as possible. Just yesterday, I was speaking with Principal Jenkins at Burroughs about not only backpacks and other resources we can contribute and have, but also information to share. As I mentioned, we're also coordinating with CFSA and other education-related partners to ensure that our young people are supported. So I think right now it is mainly through information sharing and getting resources to families who are most vulnerable.
And then one other that I want to lift up is that I'm seeing repeated are questions about Metro and WMATA. A lot of neighbors expressing concern about the way that they're seeing a lot of this federal enforcement coordinating with Metro Transit Police, increased enforcement at stations, especially across Ward 5. I've seen several mentions of the Rhode Island Avenue station, Fort Todd station. What can you speak to about that? And is there anything our office is doing to reach out to WMATA about that?
It is a real concern. After reports of a young lady being manhandled by police at a metro station, I think about a week ago, I reached out to Randy Clark to ask the level of coordination happening between federal partners and Metro Police. And there is a level of coordination. That is not to point a finger, but I think people should be clear of what's happening. And that said, there's still a lack of clarity at the extent to which that coordination is happening. Commander, I don't know if you want to speak to that on the MPD side or what you know as it relates to transit police as a relative to the federal cooperation.
Sure. Well, let me just express that I understand everybody's concerns, and I also understand my own concerns as well. It was kind of shocking to us on August 12th or 11th and 12th when they deployed to us. So we were still trying to figure out how they were going to interact with us. So I want to make sure that everybody knows how we're kind of intertwined. We've always been intertwined with the federal government. Since we're the only federal city, right before the 5th District, I ran the Violent Crime Suppression Division operations, and every single day we worked with HSI, we worked with FBI, DEA, ATF, U.S. Marshals. This is a daily routine. However, now they have kind of, like you said, giving them the green light to kind of backfill what we are doing, to add extra units to us. So there are Metro Transit, there are U.S. Marshals, they are, and they're kind of working in cahoots with us to go to different neighborhoods, whether it's high visibility or making traffic stops. And sometimes I think it's overkill. I saw some of the videos for myself. 10, 12 people on a traffic stop. I don't know if that's because there's nothing going on and that's what they're doing. However, some of the deployment, not 100% sure how it's being run. Can everybody hear me okay? Because I hear some background noise. So everybody okay? All right. I don't know if that helps. Some of the stuff we're still getting used to and comfortable with. Some things that we do not partake in. Our number one priority is to the community, and it's always been to the community. That being said, we have done such an unbelievable job of building relationships. And, my fear is some of this stuff does stir up this turmoil and go the opposite way of what we are trying to accomplish. In years past, when I was a 1D officer, just to give you an example, Capitol Police, they used to have a large range of patrol. And it was not uncommon for Capitol Police to backfill what we were doing in the Metropolitan Police Department. And that reduced a lot over the years. Same thing with Park Police. And then when I moved to 3D, it was the United States Secret Service, Park Police, and the like. Not necessarily the FBI uniform division. However, we are getting enforcements, more units in some of our high crime areas. And that's what you're seeing right now. As far as the National Guard in some of our areas, I've seen them in the 5th District, not as much as I have downtown. However, still getting used to that as well. I know that doesn't help a lot, but we are working with them. We are working with and coordinating efforts with them as best as we possibly can. When it comes to immigration, we do not enforce immigration here in the Metropolitan Police Department. However, we do have HSI, which is part of ICE. However, HSI also has other divisions. For instance, they deal with human trafficking. They deal with drug cases. They deal with financial crimes. So some of those officers have, been embedded with some of our task force. We're calling the surge task force, where there's multiple different people. So whenever with Metropolitan Police Department, we have different crime suppression teams, and they're basically working in with our crime suppression teams, assisting, so that where we've had a deficiency of officers or lack of personnel, they are backfilling those. And so we are still the lead agency in the district. I don't know if that helps or kind of visualizes everything. And I'd be open to any questions at all. We're still going out there to try and fight crime and keep people safe. However, we still are, our number one priority is to the community, making sure our relationships stay fit. And I know that it's kind of like an uncomfortable situation for us. We don't want to say we don't work with other federal agencies, but there's things that we are still getting used to. For instance, when it comes to immigration, we do not enforce immigration law. However, we've got immigration guys that have come onto some of our scenes. However, not saying that we're backpedaling, but we don't get involved with that particular event. So I just want to make sure that's clear. We have been given green lights if they've requested help that we can assist, like with a transport or something like that, but that has not happened from my understanding.
No, thank you for that comment. No, it does. I really appreciate it. I will also say that this is the commander. I would imagine how any officer behaves at any given time cannot necessarily be attributed to what MPD protocol is. So if you are seeing something that is concerning, or you have a question about something, in our toolkit, we have a way that you can report that. You can also reach out to our office to ask, like, is it normal for MPD to do this? Is it normal for MPD to refuse to give their name or to assist with ICE operations? And I can assure you we will work to get an answer. But I will say publicly, Commander Rooney has been a great partner, and he's stating what the expectation is. I know neighbors may have different experiences in real time. Go for it, Commander.
And no, I appreciate that, council member. And our priority is to the public, and no matter what. I've had persons of the Latino community where we've come up on a robbery scene, and the kid is getting pummeled, and the guy runs from us. This is in years past, where they're afraid. So we have built relationships with all different communities across the district, and I'm proud of that, and I want to keep that going. And I don't want to ever have that happen to me again, where a victim runs from a police officer because they're a victim of a crime because of fear of deportation. I say that publicly, and of course, coming in with there's some things that I'm uncomfortable with. One is we do things by the law. For instance, we stop people as an agency for reasonable suspicion. That means that we believe that a crime's about to be committed or a criminal activity is afoot. We have the ability to affect a criminal stop on that. We don't focus on any kind of we don't make stops based on race, religion, all the like. That is a violation of law, and we will not do that. We won't tolerate that, and we will investigate that. Our Metropolitan Police Department officers are required to have their badge and their nameplate on their outermost garment. That is still a fact, and that will still go on. Our body-worn cameras are still in effect. So if there's anything that's of question, please, like you say, council member, bring it to your attention, bring it to my attention. I'd be happy to look at it. As far as the other agencies, I can forward that to that particular agency for complaint. So I do not mind doing that if there's some sort of something individual or something that comes up. We do not mind looking into it and at least forwarding it to the appropriate agency.
Awesome. Thank you. I do want to just quickly read the question I asked Randy Clark and the Metro team and the response I got. To what extent is Metro Transit Police collaborating with federal officers in and around Metro stations? And Metro's formal response to me was federal law enforcement personnel and National Guard troops as part of the task force are supplementing MTPD officers throughout the system. None of those officers are patrolling alone and are not issuing any citations in the Metro system. They are there to assist MTPD with patrols and incident response. Again, that is the formal response. Your reality or what you're observing may be different, but I did want to share what Metro's formal response was to that question. Okay. For the second time, I'm going to keep us moving. I wanted to come to Commissioner Branham, and you've had your hand up and been patient. So feel free to go for it.
Thank you, Councilman. For this Ward 5 Town Hall, there is a great deal of doublespeak coming from Pirro and Patel about crime in DC. I'm a former member of the DC National Guard, and there have been positive joint DC federal anti-crime efforts in the past, and they have been successful. This is not one of them. What guidance can you give or can you offer to residents who wish to exercise their constitutional right to protest the federal overreach in the name of fighting crime, but actually this effort is designed to rescind DC home rule and to be falsely accused of supporting criminals? And for the commander, is there guidance for Ward 5 residents who are members of districts other than 5D and how they can approach this?
Commissioner, and thank you for your service. I would answer that in a number of ways. There is a very real threat to DC home rule, but again, I think this is bigger than DC. I think there is a threat to American democracy right now, and we need to be clear-eyed about that. There are multiple opportunities for you to engage with us in the toolkit that I shared, which includes mobilization on the Hill as well as mobilizations throughout the ward. We will reshare that. I also want to shout and plug Free DC as they are mobilizing neighbors all across the city. They have been doing what I think is a good job in doing so. We also link to their resource in our toolkit, but I'm going to ask them to also drop their link in the chat. So if you want to join protests, and actually, Commissioner Branham, I've seen you at some of their protests, so I know you already know about it. But for others, I would encourage you to check them out, Free DC and what they're doing. A lawful, peaceful protest to conjoin neighbors to push back in this moment is what I would offer to your question. Commander, go for it.
I lost my train of thought there. Sorry about that.
I think the commissioner had asked for, do you have any guidance for neighbors that want to resist in this moment?
Well, I tell you what, doing it in a lawful manner. The one thing is that there was two questions that he had asked, and I appreciate the question. The first one was there was conflicting statements made by different persons in the federal government, and I'm looking at the stats here, and I could tell you honestly, our crime stats in Ward 5 right now are down. Our violent crime is down minus 20% from last year, which is already down over the last 30 years. Our property crime, which was up earlier this year, I was proud to say we were up at 88% with burglaries. We're at a minus 13% now, which brings our overall property crime down to minus 6%. I know that doesn't mean I try not to go over numbers in cases like this, but it just goes to show you the mentality right now is we've been doing really good as far as an agency, as the police department as a whole. Don't get me wrong, there's some things that I know that we could do better, and we're trying to do better with personnel. $1 billion was taken out of the DC budget. A lot of that has to do with our overtime. We were living off of overtime to be able to backfill officers, where we're short by about 1,500 officers in the District of Columbia. So we're holding over a lot of personnel to try and reduce the amount of especially violent crime in the city. But to do this thing the right way, I would say to file, if you feel like there's some sort of unlawful manner, file a formal complaint with that particular agency. I think that's the easiest way to do it. If there's a Metropolitan Police Department officer that you feel like did something incorrectly, you could send that right to me, and I'll make sure that it gets routed to the right place. And I think that's the best way to do it. If you have any concerns, bring it to Councilmember Parker's attention or to my attention, and we'll make sure that it goes to the right place to make sure that it is adhered to appropriately. As far as some of the other agencies, I'm not really sure. I don't know where the hoods and the masks and things like that. I'm really uncomfortable with that. Like you had said, who's to say that me and somebody else just don't go and kidnap somebody off the street? I'm uncomfortable with that. It's not something that we practice. It's not a appropriate thing that we do with the Metropolitan Police Department. So absolutely. I hope that helps.
It does. It does. For the sake of time, I want to get some more questions. There was a question, Commander, if you could drop your contact info in the chat. I know you're on the move, so if it would be helpful for us to do it, we're happy to drop it in the chat as well for you. And as a follow-up to neighbors, we will include the commander's contact information. I do want to get to some of the questions here in the Q&A box. Can you enable saving the transcripts of the Zoom? I'm going to go on a limb and say yes, including the video will be made available to you. There was another question. When you say we, are we working to the ending the emergency? Is the mayor included in that we? I feel confident in saying yes. I will be honest with you. Whenever you're dealing with 3 separate branches of government and 14 or so people, everyone's not going to agree. But I do believe we are all aligned with ending this manufactured crisis in the district and the emergency. I think it's important for us to be more clear in our language, in our action, that in no way is what's happening in the district acceptable or helpful. But I do believe the mayor is committed to ending the emergency. There is a suggestion here about riding to the Supreme Court. I like that idea. I'll be honest with you. I don't know how much that may sway some of the justices, but we can commit to working with you to organize something. That was Jeanette Mobley that threw that out there. And I would say to neighbors, if you have ideas of how we can be working together and organizing, we're happy to be a part of it and contribute resources from the council office to make it happen. A few more. Will council amend SVA to ensure MPD cannot report people to ICE, even if they are not yet in DOC custody? The council will soon come back from recess formally, although I will assure you, we have been working through our recess and we're looking at any number of things. I think it's important to remember, though, Pam Bondi's order compelled MPD to cooperate with immigration enforcement. So there are certain things that we can do here locally, but there are certain federal limitations that have been reinforced by the courts. I will just leave it at that. One more here. Can we declare a DC state of emergency and stop paying our taxes? The mayor has declared an emergency, and I believe she's talked about declaring other emergencies. She hasn't gone as far as saying residents should stop paying their taxes. But I think what you're getting at is, are there ways that we as a people can organize to fight back on this moment? Personally speaking, not on behalf of the government, I think we should explore all options available to us. And we are more powerful if we act in unison with other like-minded individuals across state lines. In our last couple of minutes, Aloja, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right.
Aloy.
Okay, go for it with your question.
All right. Thank you so much, Councilmember Parker, for holding the town hall. I have a question for both you and the commander. My first question for you, Councilmember Parker, is how are you directly supporting organizations such as Free DC and Harriet's Wildest Dreams, who have been doing a lot of the legwork and ensuring that your constituents in Ward 5 have local organizing efforts, activist efforts to contribute to? So how are you directly supporting them? And my question for the commander is, there have been a number of videos, and myself personally witnessing instances of MPD officers being asked by bystanders who are recording for their name and badge number and them not providing it or asking us to simply back away. There's also been incidences and recordings of police officers trying to obfuscate recordings by flashing their flashlights and lights into a camera. And so I want to know from the commander, what trainings are there to let people, one, is that required for them to provide that information to bystanders, right? Their name and badge numbers. And then two, what trainings are there? Because I did hear you that you mentioned that there is a way of giving feedback, but before the incidents are happening, what trainings are there for MPD officers to work with the community to help identify themselves in moments where they do need to be held accountable?
Yep, that was a lot. I'm going to ask Commander if you can err on the side of brevity, and we will likely need to follow up. I will just say for the first question, in addition to including Free DC and others in our official materials tonight to help direct neighbors there, we are embedding opportunities for neighbors to sign up to join protests and others at Ward 5 Day and other means. The backpack giveaway we just hosted, that's just one concrete way that we're supporting the movement that is happening across the city. Commander?
Yep. And to answer the first question was, are there, with regards to badges and the names, we are required to give the badge number and name to people that ask. So that's in our general orders. That's something that we could deal with on our end from a management perspective. And then to the second question, we do have de-escalation techniques and things like that we go through regularly on a regular basis, on a yearly basis, for those type of situations, whether it's people putting stuff into our face, civil disturbance units that we get deployed to. We have training regularly for these type of events. The camera, I'm not sure about the etiquette about the flashlights and things like that. We don't shine, to kind of irritate someone next to us or someone that's trying to get some information. That's something that I don't tolerate that type of stuff. If that's what it is, please bring that to my attention. I'd like to, have that investigated.
And please share it with my office as well. If neighbors can record as many of these interactions that they're observing is possible. That also helps. Verna Claiborne, I'm going to give you the last word. We are a little bit over 8:30, but you're going to close us out with your question. And I would just say to other neighbors, we have a running record of questions in the chat and the Q&A. If we couldn't get to it, we will commit to getting you answers. If you haven't been able to ask your question and maybe you have your hand up, I would encourage you to drop it in the Q&A or the chat so we can have a record of it. And go for it, Ms. Claiborne.
Well, first, let me thank you for holding this town hall session. I think it's very important for the community. I kind of feel
I think we lost you. Uh-oh. If you're speaking, we can't hear you, so maybe you hit mute.
you know, you spoke earlier today. I saw you on a TV response, and you indicated that this issue is way beyond just this city, and that's absolutely true. And anybody who's on this call who's a student of history understands that the playbook that we are seeing is a playbook for a dictator, for anarchy. And what is clear from that history is that what the Trump administration is looking to do is to stoke civil unrest around the country. And so I want to know if the mayor, if you as a city council person, if the whole city council and the police department are sitting down and having conversations about what you are viewing beyond today and even beyond just this city, but obviously we're concerned about this city. If in fact someone ends up getting killed as a result of this occupation and it stokes, we have seen happen in this city in the past, and it, you know, might well reverberate around the country. Are you all having those discussions now?
In short, yes. Maybe not in the level of detail that you're suggesting. I think it's been a good thing that we have not seen violent outbreaks, although we certainly have seen violence directed towards our neighbors. I don't want to downplay that, but I think it would play into the hands of the Trump administration if there were violent protests or officers being attacked. We have discussed that as a government, and we are continuing to think about ways that we can mobilize neighbors safely, legally, to achieve similar goals. So that is, again, why we're asking you to join us on the Hill, join us in phone banking. I'm going to borrow this writing to the Supreme Court and joining efforts like Free DC and others. But you raise a poignant point that this is a critical moment for us that connects very clearly with history. I'm going to use that as an opportunity to pivot to one, thank everybody for tuning in. I know this is not sufficient time, but we will have more conversations like this. This isn't the beginning and certainly is not the end of this conversation. Tomorrow, our newsletter, we will recap and share resources. We will try to get answers to more of these questions. I hope to see you on the Hill and through mobilizations throughout our ward. And I would just ask that you stand with us. I think there's a tendency in times like this where we defer to the judgments of our leaders. And while there's certainly a need for us to be in alignment with the mayor and with all elected officials in the city, I think it's important for all 700,000 residents of the district to feel as though it is our right and our duty to fight for our city in this moment. It can't just be 14 people. It can't just be one mayor. It's going to be all of us. And so tonight's call to action, if you take nothing else, is for us to stand together, speak clearly and honestly in this moment, shoulder to shoulder, so we can fight back together. So again, thank you all for joining, and we look forward to sharing more information.